Elvis Presley, the star that needs no introduction. Well, I'm gonna give one anyway because I have to introduce the topic of the video, so gyrating pelvises, I guess. Hello! Welcome to Brain Spill, the laziest show on the internet. My name is Tank, and today we're talking about Elvis Presley. And you know for a fact that if we're talking about someone as infamous as this today, there is a whole host of stories we could be talking about. But today's story is quite unique, and something that you might expect for someone like Elvis to do. Yes, today's video really does ring true to the kind of person Elvis was. Someone that has a unique sound and style to him. Standing against all social norms at the time, there was no wonder that he became so popular so quickly. Some would even say that combining the styles of rhythm and blues with country, this could really be the early stages of what rock music would soon become. And of course, like a lot of popular musicians these days, there's always a massive group of fangirls who will not stop obsessing over them, and that was no different for Elvis Presley. Back in the 1950s, this was a little strange and not normal procedure. But with Elvis quickly becoming a pop sensation, he was touring around much of the country, with his performances getting more and more popular. This is young Elvis we're talking about, jailhouse rock teenage heartthrob Elvis. And no Elvis look would be complete without his trademark, swinging of his hips and thrusting of his pelvis, because the crowd loved it. In fact, Elvis was actually only 19 years old when he started performing on stage, and he reflected on what happened when he started to implement the hip thrusting into his performances with an interview for TV Guide. He said, "The very first appearance after I started recording, I was on a show in Memphis where I started doing that. I was on a show as an added extra single, a big jamboree at an outdoor theatre, and I came out on stage and was really scared stiff. It was my first big appearance in front of an audience, and I came out and I was doing a fast type tune, one of my first records, and everybody was hollering, and I didn't know what they were hollering at. Everybody was screaming and everything. And I came off stage and my manager told me that there was hollering because I was wiggling my legs. And so I went back out for an encore and did a little more. And the more I did, the wilder they went." And with that, he'd managed to crack exactly what people wanted from his performances. More leg wiggling and more pelvic thrusting. Put that on a shirt. And of course it would be these sorts of antics and, doing his own thing, which would get a new generation of fans to not only like him, but also his music. This spread like wildfire. He is of course well known for being the king of rock and roll, but another name he would soon be given was Elvis the Pelvis. In June 1956, Elvis would appear on the Milton Berle Show to perform his latest single, Hound Dog. Yeah, you know the one. And of course, while performing, he would be shaking and thrusting on stage to his fans' delight. This would cause a wild gathering of female fans to get a kick from the show. But this performance also drew attention from people who were not too keen on the whole pelvis thrusting thing, slamming the performance as an appalling act of masculinity, saying it was vulgar and animalistic. The Catholic Church themselves even put out a hit piece on Elvis, pointing out this, what was the word he used? Oh yeah. Concerns over juvenile delinquency. This guy just can't catch a break, can he? Seeing such a performance, there was definitely a split of opinion, and depending on who you were, you either loved it or you hated it. But either way, Elvis was getting more and more popular by the day, and he was due to even appear on the Ed Sullivan Show, one of the most popular daytime television shows in the United States at the time. However, pressure from the NBC was put on the producers to pull Elvis from the upcoming performances, to which eventually Ed Sullivan would relent and agree to sign Elvis up to the unprecedented $50,000 three-show contract. I mean, money talks, I guess, even if you have a gyrating man on your stage. This deal at the time for Elvis was monumental, and although it was a lot of money, you have to bear in mind that there was a few stipulations in mind, with them being acutely aware of the fact that he liked to move his legs and hips on stage. Meaning that whenever they recorded the segment, they made sure that the camera was always purely focused on his face, and never really went below the belt. Basically, whenever he started doing his moves on stage, the camera angle used to focus on the close-ups purposefully instead of a full body shot, to make sure that nothing obscene was shown on television. There has been some discussion as to whether this was something that the network actually wanted to happen, or possibly it could have been a publicity stunt pulled by Elvis's manager, mainly to try and drum up some discussion over the fact that this censorship was going on. Either way, it seemed to work. Absence makes the heart grow fonder, even if it's a huge bulge in someone's pants. The reason they decided to film this specific performance in this way was basically to avoid a riot between those that loved the hip thrusting and those who did not. Many journalists considered this a bit crass and amateurish, going as far as even saying the following. About the only guy who ever summed up Elvis the Pelvis any better was the California policeman who, after watching him writhe around a stage, commented, "If he did that on a street, we'd arrest him." This statement wasn't just hypothetical, however, as these hip gyrations had actually gotten Elvis in hot water before, in particular for a show he performed in Jacksonville, Florida in 1956. And as usual, Elvis Presley would have a mob of women flock in before the show. This, of course, was a bit of an inconvenience for everyone else who was there who wasn't there to see Elvis play. The boomers were not really happy about this, and the local clergy had taken steps to have arrest warrants issued and drawn before Elvis arrived. Charges of impairing the morals of minors were included in the warrants, and the judge who drafted these up made a particular jab at Elvis, showing their displeasure over the scenes that occurred the last time he turned up to play a show, just a few years prior. So, basically what they told him was, if you go on that stage and you wiggle your hips and thrust your pelvis, we're going to arrest you on stage. So he had to be particularly careful about what he did that night. Just to give you an idea as to how much some people despised Elvis and his actions, Reverend Robert Gray at the Trinity Baptist Church had told youngsters and teenagers at a service that Presley had achieved a new low in spiritual degeneracy and might not be offered salvation. They prayed for his redemption, and well, Elvis was pretty offended by this when he found out. The reason that Elvis was so upset by this was that he was actually religious himself and had been from a very young age, and I suppose for someone from your own church to say these things about you is pretty low. And clearly the Reverend isn't a fan of Elvis or his music, because if he was, he would know that Elvis actually started his career making gospel music, and even intermittently made gospel music throughout his career. Yes, he was literally preaching to the choir, people. Police were in attendance with cameras to keep an eye on Elvis during the show to make sure his hips were in check, something which he would have to curb during this particular performance. This show, plus the 5 other performances he was doing during his 2-day visits, were completely sold out, and thankfully, he managed to narrowly avoid the long arm of the law, and nothing came of it. And you might think that this might be the last time something like this happened to Elvis. No, it happened again, when he played the Pan Pacific Auditorium in LA. Again, the local police had to warn Elvis before he did his show to keep things above board and make sure that his hips didn't get too out of control. So again, he managed to thankfully not get in trouble with the local police. But it just goes to show that the same story keeps happening again and again and again. Some people really don't like the guy. And this, amongst other occasions, was a very close call, but thankfully, he managed to keep wiggling those hips on stage. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to be notified as soon as I upload my next video, be sure to hit the bell button. And if you've got any ideas for what topics you'd like me to discuss next, let me know down in the comments below. As always, sources used in the video will be in the description. I'm pretty sure I've used the words Elvis and pelvis pretty interchangeably throughout the video. I've said a whole mixture of both words, and I just want to know if the YouTube automatic subtitling is going to work here. Is it going to pick up on the right words when I say Elvis and pelvis? Or will it say Welvis and Gelvis, or a mixture of all of them? Who knows, I'd be pretty interested to find out. But for now, I'll leave it there. I'll see you guys in the next video. Fantastic.